When I was a kid, The Wind Waker looked like the coolest game in the entire world. Because not only was it a new Zelda game, but it was a pirate Zelda game. And the smoke looked really cool. But I didn't end up playing it until it showed up on the Wii U, which meant I played it for the first time with an adultish sized brain. And sadly, The Wind Waker is not a game that stands up to that kind of scrutiny. It's a complete mess, and it's almost assuredly the worst mainline Zelda game. But why? That's a fair question. But I want to look at the game from a slightly different angle. I think we can break most games down into a combination of gameplay, aesthetics, and story. And ideally, a game will strike a perfect balance between these three factors. But interestingly enough, I don't think a game has to do so in order to be considered an excellent game. Tetris has fantastic gameplay, but no story to speak of, and it's got extremely rudimentary graphics. Planescape Torment is still lauded for its excellent story and writing, even though its graphics and gameplay might now be considered extremely dated. So, how does The Wind Waker get this balance wrong if the balance doesn't actually seem to matter? Well, first off, it seems to me that The Wind Waker is proof that a game cannot be good based on aesthetics alone, or at least not in the same way that games can be good based just on gameplay or just on story. I say this because The Wind Waker is one of the most aesthetically pleasing games I've ever played, and it's still not good. It's full of charm and character, and everything feels crafted by human hands. Link's expressions especially are some of the most impressive and enjoyable in all of video gaming. The music is wonderful, the environments are vibrant, and everything runs smoothly. And when the game plays to these strengths, it's pure joy in cel-shaded form. Hell, the game's story is also relatively strong. One of my favorite things it does is play with the continuity of the series. This game takes place hundreds of years after Ocarina of Time, at a time when the events of that game have passed into legend. That said, the Link you play here is not just a reincarnation of the Link from that game. There's actually a very tenuous connection between the two, and the game seems to toy with the idea of destiny and the hero's journey. Plus, Zelda is a cool, confident pirate captain. It's all very refreshing. And yet the game is not good. It's a shallow husk of a Zelda game. Based on my triangular conception of video games, that must mean that the gameplay is not only the culprit here, but also the most important factor of the three. It all makes sense, people. Don't think about it too much. So in The Wind Waker, you get places by sailing. But what the developers did was take the idea of sailing, gut it like a pig, and let all the fun bits sluice their way right down the drain. And then you're left with a gross idea corpse. And that's what The Wind Waker is. It's a gross idea corpse. So in order to move forward, you have to be sailing with the wind. What this means is that anytime you want to change direction, you have to play a song to change the wind direction. If your destination is behind you, this is the only way to make any progress. This isn't a deal breaker in and of itself, but the number of times you have to do this over the course of the game is maddening. It's made even worse by the fact that there's basically nothing to do while you sail. The islands you're going to are spread so far apart that the majority of the game is spent watching little tiny pieces of land get bigger, bit by bit. And once you get to these pieces of land, you get to round through the worst collection of dungeons the Zelda series has ever seen. One of the strengths of the Zelda series has always been a sense of place. Ocarina of Time especially was excellent at this. Dungeons weren't just puzzle chambers, they were parts of the world that connected to the areas around them. In The Wind Waker, the dungeons are basically just puzzle chambers. For example, the Earth Temple is basically a series of large square rooms where you either fight a couple enemies or solve puzzles. And in my script, I put quotes around the word puzzles so that I'd say it sarcastically. This is because the puzzles are not very good. The worst part of the dungeon, though, is that it takes the form of one long escort quest. So does the Wind Temple. Because there are only about 5 dungeons in the game, that means that for a large portion of the actual game part of the game, you're escorting some non-responsive bird or wood person around a bunch of square rooms for completely arbitrary reasons. And these are the fun parts. And then, when that's all done, you get to sail around the entire game world for hours and hours so you can find 8 pieces of one stupid triangle so you can fight Ganondorf, even though the whole point of doing the dungeons was so that you could fight Ganondorf. How this version of video game hell fits into my triangle theory, I do not know.